Everyone wants a piece of the sky, until it finally looks back at you. Finding that golden egg was my first mistake. Keeping it, definitely the second. But watching a tiny, fluffy ball of down transform into a heavenly dreadnought was worth every single scar. We didn't just survive the clouds, we conquered them. He isn't a beast, he's my king. Time to fly. Forest breathed with a heavy silence, as if time itself had stopped. I saw it, deep within the roots of an ancient tree, a strange golden object shrouded in moss. An egg, but instead of a smooth shell, it was a chaotic mix of soft down and iridescent scales. As I touched it, a wild, pulsating life thrummed beneath my palm. Then came the crack, a sharp, organic snap that sent a sudden chill down my spine. Through the jagged gap, a small, wet feline nose pushed through, catching the air. He tumbled out, an absurd, fluffy mess, spraying fluid and shaking his head with frantic confusion. We froze. His eyes, a maternal blue, looked directly into my soul. Growth is a messy business, especially when you're built like a lion, but blessed with wings that feel more like wet rags. At first, Arslan was a walking disaster. Watching him try to stand on that damp moss was like watching a high-stakes gamble with gravity. He'd try to scratch an itch behind his ear, only to smack himself in the face with a wing he didn't even know he owned. But the cute kitten act vanished the moment he smelled fresh meat. He'd wrinkle that tiny nose, snatch a scrap from my palm, and let out a growl that sounded like a very angry, very tiny flute. By sunset, he'd give up on being a predator and curl up on my boot, a warm, vibrating weight. And as he slept, those maternal blue eyes finally shifted to gold. The king was waking up, and he was hungry for more. By the third month, Arslan was a walking contradiction. He had the soul of an apex predator and the coordination of a drunk kitten. I watched him spend hours stalking a single blue butterfly. He'd freeze, wiggle his rear in that classic feline way, and then launch, only to realize he'd forgotten his wings entirely, face-planting into the dirt. But his favorite game was armadillo soccer. He'd find a scaly little guy rolled into a perfect ball and bat him across the clearing like a fuzzy World Cup striker. It looked like pure play, but his claws were getting sharper, and those heavy wings were finally starting to catch the breeze. He wasn't just a pet anymore. He was a force of nature in training, even if he still got spooked by his own shadow. Adolescence is a brutal teacher, especially when you're built for the sky but still have the grace of a brick. Arslan was the size of a mountain dog now, pure muscle, pure ego. He spent an hour belly crawling through the ferns, stalking a rabbit like he was already the king of the forest. He launched, a perfect, powerful strike. But his wings had other plans. They snapped open mid-air, catching a crosswind that sent him spinning like a lost kite. One second he was a predator, the next he was just a ball of gold fur and uncoordinated feathers tumbling through the branches. The rabbit didn't even run, it just watched him crash. I had to pick the twigs out of his mane while he whimpered like a cub again. We weren't rulers of the air yet. We were just falling. Twilight brought a silence that felt like a trap. Arslan's ears twitched. He felt the shift in the wind before I did. Out of the shadows, the first void shrieker emerged, a jagged silhouette of pure malice. Arslan didn't cower. His voice finally dropped, a guttural, bone-shaking growl that vibrated through the ground. When the creature lunged, Arslan met it midair, a mass of muscle and fury. He took his first hit, a dark scratch on his flank, and the kitten vanished. He pinned the shadow, watching it dissolve into black smoke. He looked at me then, his golden eyes burning with a weight I hadn't seen before. Then, from the deep dark, the rest of them answered. Survival isn't about the absence of fear. It's about what you do when the ground disappears. The shriekers came like a living storm, a black vortex blotting out the sun. Arslan stood at the edge of the world, his massive paws trembling on the cold, jagged stone. He wasn't looking at the sky, he was looking at the drop. But when they dove for me, he didn't hesitate. He jumped. Those first few seconds were pure chaos, gold fur and uncoordinated feathers tumbling through the void. And then, the wind answered. He caught the thermal, his wings snapping taut for the very first time. He tore through the shadows, a blur of sudden, violent grace. That day, the earth lost a cub, and the sky gained its king. We were finally home. We stopped playing. The sky was turning, and Arslan felt the change in his blood. He began devouring the glowing ore from the deep caves, his soft down hardening into metallic plates that shimmered like obsidian. I strapped the heavy leather across his back. It felt like armoring a god. We spent weeks in the gales, training his wings to shred the wind itself. He learned to hover, a golden statue suspended in the storm, before diving through the canyons in a blur of predator grace. When his voice finally broke, the roar stripped the trees bare for miles. But as the first static sparks began to arc through his mane, the horizon died. The swarm was here, and we were finally ready to fight. The storm was an ambush. Arslan didn't hesitate. He was the size of a limousine now, a golden bullet launched into the heart of the thunder. Then the shriekers hit, hundreds of jagged shadows closing in like a crushing fist. He went into a death spin, claws shredding the dark until the air tasted like ozone and ash. I was on his back, hacking at talons reaching for my throat. Then, lightning found his mane. He didn't burn, he inhaled the voltage. He dived, dodging shadow fire, before snatching their alpha mid-air. He slammed it into the mountain, a tectonic impact. He's bleeding, but the pain only fed his rage. He opened his jaws, and a lance of blue electric flame tore the sky apart. The dark retreated, but the real storm was just starting. The air above the storm was a graveyard of static. Arslan didn't just fly anymore, he ascended. We reached the zenith, and his golden fur ignited with a blinding celestial white. He spread his wings, 15 meters of living obsidian, until he became the sky itself. Then, he let out a roar that wasn't sound but a physical law. A visible shockwave of pure static tore through the clouds, turning the entire swarm into a rain of gray ash. We dropped then, a golden meteor burning through the atmosphere, slamming into the nest with the weight of a falling star. He stood amidst the ruins, his mane still humming with the storm's ghost. I didn't see a beast anymore. I saw my brother. My god. Peace is a heavy thing when you're a god of the sky. Arslan was a mountain of gold now, a living landscape larger than the trains that used to haunt my childhood dreams. He turned his massive wing into my sanctuary, a living tent of obsidian feathers shielding me from the mountain's bite. And then, out of the fading dark, she returned, the same blue spark from his first failed hunt. I watched him move a claw that could crush a fortress with the precision of a surgeon. No roar, no strike, he just waited. The ground began to vibrate, a rhythmic, low-frequency earthquake of pure contentment. We were a world of our own up there, far above the scars of the war. He wasn't measuring the clouds anymore. He was just home. Because some friends, they have wings.